Welcome back to the channel, everybody. No fancy intros today. We're going to jump straight into this episode. A lot of you are probably thinking, based off the title thumbnail, this has to be comedy, satire, sarcasm of some sort. No, I can assure you this is a very, very serious video today. And I'm sure you're wondering, how is this even remotely possible? Well, that's what I'm going to show you today. So what we're going to be doing is going through all of the USASOC and Army Human Resource Command documents and service records of John McPhee. What these documents are the unclassified, releasable USASOC Freedom of Information Act documents that are the investigation and the Special Forces tab revocation of John McPhee, amongst a bunch of other even more serious punishments in 2009. All right, so none of this is my opinions. None of this is secondhand stories through the rumor mill, grapevine. Everything I show you in this entire episode will be backed up by documents from either USASOC or U.S. Army Human Resource Command. So let's not waste any more time. We're going to jump into it. We're going to start at the beginning, work our way through it. I'm going to give you some viewer discretion advised. There's some pretty horrific things that you may hear in this, but, you know, that's the way it is. Truth is what's important. So here we go. All right, so first document we're going to look at here in the linear chain of events of the Special Forces tab revocation, amongst, as you'll see here, the revocation of the Green Beret. The MOS changed from 18 series, which is Green Beret, 18 Zulu, to 11 Zulu and infantrymen. All right, so for those of you who haven't been in the military, but in the military is going to know what a DA 4187 is. Personnel action, it's essentially changing something about the soldier's records. As you can see here, down by the X, you have the reclassification and SF tab. When we come down to the remarks section here, you will see, number 1, request reclassification from 18 Zulu, Green Beret Team Sergeant or Sergeant Major, to 11 Zulu, infantryman. Number 2, concurrent with this reclassification, request the award of the Special Forces tab to Sergeant Major McPhee be revoked. Soldier's been notified of this actions. And as you see down here, yes, this was part of a GOMAR. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay, as you see, not only that, look who this was signed by. Admiral McRaven, all the way to the top. So yes, this was very serious. All right, and yes, trust me that we're going to get into all of the reasons why all these punishments were doled out, but we need to take a look at all of the punishments because it's a lot more than just the tab revocation. All right, next document you'll see here, memorandum from the commander. As you can see, recommendation for termination of CMF 18 status, being a Green Beret, and the Special Forces tab of Sergeant Major John McPhee. It says here, I have reviewed the file, including a General Officer Memorandum of Reprimand today, which I directed and filed in Sergeant Major McPhee's OMPF, and recommend you initiate administrative procedures to terminate Sergeant Major McPhee's current MOS, being a Green Beret, and revoke his Special Forces tab. Sergeant Major John McPhee's serious misconduct while assigned to United States Special Operations Command reflects a deficiency in the professional judgment and personal integrity, calling into question his ability to adhere to the personal and professional standards required of a Special Forces Sergeant Major. I make this recommendation based off of AR 600-37, Chapter 1-4, and the objectives of balancing the rights of individual soldiers with the Army's need to ensure that soldiers of poor moral character are not continued in the service and advanced position of leadership, trust, and responsibility. All right, I know you're already asking up front, what could have been so bad that doled out some of these extreme punishments? We haven't even got through all of them yet, but trust me, that's going to come in the second half of the video. All right, let's keep moving through these documents. All right, and so the final official orders, permanent change of records, right here, as you can see, the following order is revoked or rescinded as shown. Action revoke pertaining to award of Special Forces tab by the commander. All right, now I'm going to show you the rest of the punishments that came with having the Green Beret revoked and the Special Forces tab revoked here. So as you see here, SWCS revocation of your Special Forces tab, also the MOS change to 11 Zulu, so revocation of the Green Berets. Well, suspension of your special pays, suspension of your security clearance, and 30 days to find an assignment at Fort Bragg, vice PCSing to Fort Drum. All right, so obviously these are very, very extreme punishments. The revocation of the Green Beret Special Forces tab, getting your security clearances banned, things like that. But that's not even our biggest punishment. And this next one actually leads us into some very, very concerning misrepresentation of service because, as we all know him, Sergeant Major McPhee,
also known as the Sheriff of Baghdad or Shrek. You are a retired U.S. Army Special Operations Sergeant Major with over 20 years.
Well, that's really interesting because what I have here is John's service record sent to me directly by U.S. Army Human Resources Command as coordinated through USASOC. And according to the U.S. Army, John is a retired master sergeant. That is an E8. That is a very different rank than a sergeant major. As we see here, his full service records, he joined in 1991. That date's going to be very important later as we talk about some things. In Career Management Field 11, the infantry, and CMF 18, Special Forces, all the way up until, obviously, he had that tab revoked in 2009. And confirming that, as we move down through his service records and we get down into awards here, we start to hit into the schools and badges. Yeah, Ranger tab here you see, but what you don't see here is, of course, the Special Forces tab that would be before that. So according to the U.S. Army, John is not a retired Sergeant Major Green Beret. John is a retired Master Sergeant Infantryman. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, that is not the story that we've been told. And the thing is, these things, guys, these are a privilege. These are not a right. And when the Special Forces Regiment revokes this privilege from you, you are no longer a part of this community at all. Now we have to look at why. Why did all this happen? Why did all these extreme punishments happen? And I told you at the beginning of the video, I'm going to say it again. What we're going to get into is extremely disturbing and try to leave my emotions out of it. Downright disgusting. But I'll let you make the decisions for yourself. First, we're going to see what Special Forces Command had to say. All right, so this is the actual reprimand document from the Special Forces Command team, and we're going to go through it, okay? So it gets into the start of the reasons why. So it says here, you are reprimanded for committing adultery with a fellow non-commissioned officer assigned to this command in violation of Article 134 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. A commander's inquiry conducted by Redacted, pursuant of Rule of Courts Martial 303, found that during 2008 and January of 2009, you carried on an adulterous relationship with a married woman who was not your wife. During the entire duration of the relationship, both you and Redacted were assigned to Joint Special Operations Command. You admitted to this misconduct during the investigation. And here is what Special Forces Command had to say about John. You are hereby reprimanded for your misconduct. Your acts demonstrate an absolute departure from the moral, ethical, and legal standards required of our most senior non-commissioned officers. As the senior enlisted advisor of the J8 Directorate, you were entrusted to lead, supervise, and care for your soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. You cannot lead without setting the proper legal, moral, and ethical example. You demonstrated an utter lack of judgment and blatant disregard for these standards of conduct, undermining the fundamental good order and discipline of your unit. As such, your conduct falls markedly short of the standards expected of leaders in this command. That's a far cry difference from what he has to say about himself.
I mean, I think I'm a great role model.
So you might be thinking adultery, that's not that big of a deal. Oh, there's a lot more to it than that we're going to take a look at. But as you can see here, all of the reasons: adultery, DUI, and detainee abuse investigations. And as that relationship spiraled, I'm going to show you some things that happened here. And this is where I'm going to tell you, extreme viewer discretion advised. All right, so some of this I'm not even going to be able to read because of YouTube censorship guidelines, but we'll work our way through it. Okay, as you see here. Even though I confessed to my husband and left, he was also very much full of rage. Sometimes he would just snap. All of this anger would just come out of nowhere, and he's pushed the window of my truck, throw things, scream at me, and threaten me by saying I better stop whatever I was doing, yelling or defending myself, because he was capable of things I couldn't imagine, and not to put myself in that situation. He's got in my face, bowed up to me, telling me I'd better shut my mouth because I had no idea what he was capable of. The worst was him putting a loaded blank to my face. He did this because I turned down a song he was listening to so I could hear what he was saying. He was drunk. He also has thrown me to the ground. He did this when I was 3 months pregnant. I called 911, but I did not press charges. He had threatened to commit S every time I thought we should part. I would stay. During that same time we were seeing each other, he was also on and off with his ex-wife. Found out another time in particular when I went to his house to visit, she was there. I didn't go inside, but just drove away. I later found out from her that he had pointed a loaded gun and threatened to shoot her if she didn't leave. He did this because she admitted to sleeping with his friend and then roommate. I talked to John about this, and after the fact, he not only admitted everything to me, but he also told me that she was 5 seconds from getting her head blanked off if she hadn't left. We'll scroll down to the bottom. He has had the police called on him several times by his ex-wife for blank abuse. The reason, redacted, excessive abuse on detainees. So what you see there, and why that's redacted, is the reason he was removed from Delta Force. It's a little bit different story than he's told about getting divorced, and that's why, according to the investigation here, was because of excessive abuse of detainees. He has told me in reference to that everyone was doing it, and he had done a lot worse things than he had even gotten fired for. That goes against everything this funny green hat stands for. The oppressor liber, to free the oppressed. And that's not even the worst of it. I'm also now going to show you something that John said himself. And this is extreme viewer discretion advised. Okay? I'm not even going to be able to read most of it, but it's going to be up here. There is an email from Sergeant Major McPhee to the victim, which states, following blank intercourse the previous night, in a statement, he explained the context of the email to be that evening, he was over at her apartment, could not recall the reasons. They started to mess around. He stated she had already taken medication for the evening and laid there versus being fully involved. As we scroll down to the bottom here, you'll find out about the victim. When asked, Sergeant Major McPhee stated that many times when he went to the victim's apartment after 7 o'clock, he had to bang loudly on the door just to be heard, since she took 2 Ambien and Xanax to sleep nightly. To all the young men watching this, who look up to Green Berets, look up to special operators, there is no situation ever where this is okay. I don't want you to think that for a second. So I think we all can understand now why Special Forces Command and Special Forces Regiment decided to strip his Special Forces tab and his Green Beret, ban his security clearances, demote him. Super disappointing, man. Just super disappointing. You have to be honest, guys. And you can be honest, all right? There's guys out there. Taylor Kavanaugh, great example. Kicked off of the SEAL teams. He tells that story honestly, with integrity. And people respect him for it. But this brings up the question of, if you're going to lie about all of these things, what else might you be lying about? Well, let's take a look at something.
Did you do any deployment trips in that 18 months?
Let's see. Oh, we jumped in Iraq in like fucking 90 or whatever it was. I broke my leg,
Shit.
landed in a minefield, had a walk with broken bones, and then yeah.
All right.
So John says there in Mike Ritland's podcast, I believe that was less than a week ago, that he jumped into Iraq during Desert Storm in 1990 into an Iraqi minefield. That's an insane story. But I said we were going to come back to his service records real quick. Let's take a look at those. Now, when I look at these service records, the first thing I notice is John didn't join the military until January of 1991. How did you jump into an Iraqi minefield in 1990 when you weren't even in the military? But let's say he forgot when he joined the military. January of 1991. Do you guys know when Desert Storm, the combat of Desert Storm ended? February of 1991. The war ended when John was in basic training. And not only that, he's missing 2 very important service awards. He doesn't have the Southwest Asia Service Medal, which Desert Storm veterans get. And he also doesn't have the Kuwait Liberation Medal of Saudi Arabia, which is what you would have gotten for Desert Storm. What he does have is the Kuwait Liberation Medal of Kuwait, which you could have gotten up until 1993, well after the war. So, interesting story. Sounds cool. The dates, unfortunately, don't work at all. It may have been that he did a static line jump onto Kuwait airfield after the war was over, but that is a very, very different story than jumping into an Iraqi minefield during Desert Storm. So I think it's time for some honesty, and it's time to stop representing yourself as part of our community, which you are most certainly not. You guys think I'm just trying to go after this guy? I can assure you, there are 200 more pages of this. Far, far more embarrassing than what I've showed you. And I'm hoping I don't need to release any more of this. I'm hoping this is enough. Or I may have to public forum and release every single one of these documents to the public in a Google Drive. I'll just have to wait and see. That's not going to be up to me. So again, I'm sorry to, all of his fans and supporters. I get it. There's going to be a lot of cognitive dissonance that goes in learning something like this. I've had no problem with John. I've done multiple pieces of content on John. You can go back and look for yourself. I have been supportive of him or defended him in every single one. But this is not what the Special Forces Regiment is about. And the Green Beret community will continue to police its own. It's going to do it for this one. Catch you on the next one.